pleased to be here again to talk to you about chord closure.
Which sounds really exciting when you put it like that.
Yeah, does it really?
Yeah, say it again.
Chord closure. Yeah.
We're
Vocal cords.
We're going to be talking a little bit of anatomy, aren't we? Because I guess that's a good place to start. We're going to be talking some of the sounds that are created that would give an impression that we are doing something with our folds / chords.
Yeah.
And then get straight into some questions, some kind of reality.
Some reality, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to start it off with the spelling of chord. Often see this on blogs. I just can't deal with it sometimes.
I mean, they're both musical.
Yeah, okay. So there is some
justification.
Yeah, whatever you want, what name ever you give to that you can kind of let them off the hook a little bit. But can you? I don't know if you can. But I do remember misspelling passaggio a few times.
Yep.
Without enough.
And I'm sure a cappella's been done a few times. Just to...
Does it have an apostrophe? Is the A separate? Like I see it.
Capital,
yeah, do you see it sometimes?
C's, P's, or something like that.
Okay. Without music is how we get around that one. But vocal cords is C-O-R-D-S, not with a H. Okay, so glad we cleared that one up. But the vocal cords, yes. So we can presume that you've read the article and that it's absolutely etched in your mind. But I think that's highly unlikely, and some of you probably don't care for reading and just thought I'll attend the webinar just to get
easy. People learn in different ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry guys, I'm not being rude. I'm just logging into Snapchat. If anybody who's on Snapchat, please feel free to naked vocalist.
And if you want to hit us with questions there as well, or indeed a video of you doing it. So we're going to talk about what chord closure is. Why is it important to us? Which muscles actually contribute to it, because it has different planes, if you like, different contributors to the closure itself, and then we can give our account of exercises and how we would achieve chord closure ourselves or with our clients or whatever. Probably some in the article, maybe a few more, and some of you guys actually being voice coaches and singers, maybe you've tackled this problem before, gone for adding chord closure to your voice and are aware of certain exercises that you feel are helpful, or maybe you're absolutely a beginner, you're clueless about this and you need to know more about what it is and how you can affect it. So do you want to start us off? Like what is, if someone hears the term chord closure,
yeah,
what are they? What conversation are they in?
Really boring one. No, you know, somebody referred to this back in the day as you know, singing is constantly a balance of muscle over air, and you know, vice versa. So we know what air is, and obviously the muscle comes in here in the larynx, and it's the coming together of these chords that creates the sound waves that smash around in the throat and mouth that then gives us a sound that we create as singers. And how we bring those chords together is really important. If we bring them together too hard, too much muscle, then we've got a choice as a human, and that is to blow more air or to give up. And the end result is probably not going to be a good result. Equally, if we don't bring them together hard enough, we again have to make a decision. Do we reduce the airflow? If we blow too much, we might blow them apart, and you get like a flip or breathy sound in general. So yeah, how we bring the folds together is really important, and balancing that adduction with airflow is the most important aspect. Really hard to do, and it's a thing that most singers will spend all of their life trying to do. And the issue comes in that, very basically, different muscles within the chords will help you balance yourself on different pitches, very basically. So what are those muscles and ligaments and everything involved in that structure that help us balance on different pitches, Chris?
Well, you know what you say about bringing them together too tightly. I mean, that could possibly be the most common misuse of those muscles. And you know what? That's within our conscious control. These muscles, we can use them consciously, albeit with very little feedback, without proprioception, without knowing their position, just from nervous feedback or even pain, you know, that kind of thing. Like, you don't really feel them at all, but we can consciously control them like that. And the reason why I think that using these muscles too strongly is because what their main function is to close the vocal cords for survival purposes. So hence, when you swallow, the vocal cords close incredibly tightly in order for you to not choke on your food. So we always have to return to the primary function of the vocal folds. Hence why the adductory muscles, and adduct is going to be a term you hear a lot. It means, you know, to close. When we adduct the vocal folds, there's several muscles that create this entire closure, because we need like 4 basic backup plans to make sure we don't choke to death, right? So when we look at, if you were to look at a video of the vocal folds, and if you haven't done it before, I urge you to. It's really interesting on YouTube. Just type, you know, video vocal folds or whatever. There's at the back, there's the arytenoid cartilages, which each vocal fold is attached to. And firstly, there's a set of muscles called the interarytenoids that close the arytenoid cartilages and begin, let's say, the most basic part of closing the glottis. And the glottis is just the name for the hole. It's the name, they've given a space a name. You know, I prefer to just call it like nothing.
Hole.
It's whole. So the glottis is the space there in the vocal folds. So the interarytenoids close the vocal folds, but there's a tightening effect at the same end of the vocal fold closure, so the back where the arytenoids come together. There's also activation of these muscles called the LCA muscles, lateral cricoarytenoid.
So I want to say at that point, because it always used to confuse me a little bit about, you know, when you're looking, if you look on Google and look at the diagram of the larynx, and when you say back, you mean
this side, back of the neck.
That's where the sap. I mean, obviously not there, but you know, this end. I just knew that that's something that always used to get me. I was looking at it going, I don't even know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, which direction is this? Yeah. So the vocal folds are always joined together at the front, and then they open and close at the back like that, rather than they all come apart and whatever. So we get that initial closure, but as the article points out as well, that is the closure for, you know, like east to west or whatever, you know, coming together. But we have, if we were to say that was above the vocal or looking on top of the vocal folds down the throat, if we were to take the vocal folds and look at them directly in front, we also need to look at cord closure in that sense as well, because there are muscles which we more commonly mention, being the thyroarytenoid. And that's the very big body of the vocal fold that, if that muscle is active and it's on, the vocal folds become quite thick, and hence they become a very strong barrier, you know, or beast or barrier for any of that choking, right? So they are a big thick muscle that are able to create a lot of cord closure in the depth of the vocal folds, but also the top of the vocal folds still are in contact with each other, creating cord closure. And the part of the vocal fold anatomy that is helping that out is a vocal ligament that is just on the outside. So and the relevance of all those muscles are huge in our singing and can be influenced with training. So let's just check. We didn't check to see if anybody was actually talking to us. So we have had a question. Carol would like a refund I'm not sure what currency. Is it just time? I'm not sure. Time stops for no one, Carol. But she is live and alive, which is probably quite nice. Rhiannon is also here as well, which is excellent. But we will get onto the questions really, really quickly. So we've got all those muscles that we need to train. So let's we've got our list here of things that we included in the article, but each one of those muscles needs a bit of training, a bit of livening up, if you like, so that as singers we can develop a sense of how we control these muscles and how they contribute and what sound is created from using them whilst we are training, because it's not easy just to go, I'll close my LCA right now.
There's no on-off.
There's no on-off.
That one, unfortunately.
It's quite tricky. So let's just jump into a couple of the exercises on how we start to influence chord closure. But I mean, would you be able to demonstrate like what if someone has a distinctly breathy sound? What, just to be clear, what are we talking about there? That is, I mean, let's go a little more subtle. But I mean, that's very breathy. There's no.
Yes, it is. Yes.
There's no sound at all, is there?
There's nothing there.
No.
But yeah, it's common, especially with young girls. Sorry, just is. And we know that there are some certain exercises that will stimulate some more closure on that. And to be honest with you, if you're a teacher out there, this isn't an overnight thing. But if we start with like cry, or fry, or like what do people call it? Creak.
Creak, yeah. Yeah. Often the plague of a modern way of talking.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
hey there.
And the scientists say that apparently that stimulates the retinoid cartilages.
Right.
So, yeah.
Brings them together tightly.
Yeah.
So it as much as it's a little bit of a plague in speech, it is a useful exercise in moderation, right?
In moderation. Of course, like if it's stimulating that and it's going to start overdoing that over time, and it's too much adduction down there, like if you're using it in your speak all the time, then you're going to have problems. Balance, everything in balance. So that's one exercise that a lot of teachers will be using out there, is the fry or the creak. What about the cry?
Well, the cry, it kind of affects the vocal folds in ways that I don't fully understand. But what I do know about cry is it does bring together a little bit more action on the interretinoids and the LCA to give you a little bit more closure. But also the cry can also be related to how we balance registers. So the ability to actually, for the geeks out there, to be able to transfer tension onto the ligament. So, and what I mean by that is, when we go from the bottom voice to the top voice, the vocal folds are stretching. The thyroretinoid, which is that very thick muscle on the body of the vocal fold, that contributes to chord closure. But a lot of us who are a bit yelly like that have a lot of trouble letting that muscle relax and letting tension transfer out of it while it stretches and gets stiff. And then there's another part of our vocal folds that begins to dominate vibration, which is the ligament on the outside. And so if there's problems with how tension transfers from the thick thyroretinoid to the ligament, then inevitably, because they contribute to the depth of your chord closure, there's going to be problems in the chord closure. Because either if you don't have enough thyroretinoid, then the vocal cords won't come together on the bottom. If you have too much, then, and that is like, too much chest voice, as people say, then you could sound also quite squeezed. And cry helps you to kind of get yourself out of that a little bit. And it affects the vocal cords on quite a few different planes.
Much like the kind of nasty sounds and the
yes,
all that kind of thing. But that's an interesting point that you said about the you know, the how much the thyroretinoid comes together, and that will affect the sound tone. But also we really do need to think about the pitch as well.
Yes.
The fact that, you know, the tension will affect our ability to pitch. And I mean, we always talk about when somebody overactivates thyroretinoid or thyroretinoid, to keep it basic, because it's most common. But if you hear someone going flat, you know, there was one today that I would probably went, you need to work on your musicality, or you need to work on your pitching there. You're a bit pitchy. And it's like, as soon as you can work out that balance between the two,
yes,
it cleans it up. And it really does come down to physiological and mechanical.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that's almost the massive confusion in developing chord closure, because the perception of when the chords are together to the listener, and the singer is also the listener, right? So singer as well. The perception of good chord closure is a chesty sound, is what people see as chest voice, or something very like, yeah, something really strong. But because the ligament, which is partly responsible for completing our chord closure, because it's part of the contributors of chord closure, if we don't have a very, very good, well-trained, healthy head voice, where we can stretch the pitches right the way up to the top and not be breathy in that, to be really clean up there, then we can't fully exploit our powerful sound. We won't have a full complement of chord closure. And I think that's what splits people. Like, I need head voice to sound more chesty. And the truth is, yeah, to be honest, certainly to be able to sound strong with much less effort.
Yeah.
I feel like that's true. And that's, I think, one of the most confusing things about chord closure is how the head voice mechanism, or the ligament, contributes to the sound and can make you sound richer in the end.
Yeah. I totally agree. So many people be sticking with just doing what you know, especially in the low notes, just because it works. And again, it really gives justification for that. We need to get you out of that and just start doing, even if it's breathy at the top.
Yes.
Start working into that. And those sounds at the top. That's why a lot of teachers will be going for like the all that stuff in the top for a long time.
To try and clean up the breathiness in head voice.
Because it would start off like,
yeah, and it almost doesn't matter how long you spend trying to drag that bottom voice into the high spots to create a richer top. If genuinely the top voice is like that, you can't really take that forward very quickly, can you?
No.
You have to go and address the closure. In your head voice, yeah. But we're talking a lot about chord closure from a muscular point of view, but there's also a harmonic perspective to it, in that if we raise the larynx a wee bit, physiological things happen. You know, muscles get influenced and inhibited sometimes. But if we ignore that, and if we actually look at, if we're raising the larynx to take advantage of harmonic energy, different harmonic energy. Namely, for the geeks, the second harmonic. If we're trying to raise the larynx to tune into a piece of the sound wave that is called the second harmonic, that harmonic is closely linked to what's called closed quotient, which is the amount of time the chords spend closed in one cycle. So they open and they close, they open and they close. The closed bit is the closed quotient, and we'll hear it as chord closure. But if, for instance, that was 50, 50, 50, 50, by tuning into the second harmonic, we can often influence that to be more like 30, 70, 30, 70. And the longer those vocal cords stay closed in a cycle, the more chest or perception of chest voice we will have in our sound, even when we're high up. So as well as being able to control muscles with things like creak, cry, we've also got to consider the shape of the throat and the mouth and how that harmonic energy influences our vocal fold setting.
Yeah, which is why, I mean, that situation there, the closed quotient and the versus the tension of the thyroid, for example, those two play off. But that's why it can be confusing for a teacher when you hear a singer sing and they're creating a massive sound and they might not actually necessarily be doing themselves too much, they might have too many problems. You can hear a big sound and be like, whoa, we need to kind of calm you down a tiny bit. Whereas in fact, they are just creating some incredible energy from their instrument by using it in a correct way.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side, as a singer, that's when things get really tricky, because if you're at a place where you can use this process of the higher larynx and creating the energy, the form harmonic relationship to increase the quotient, then you're on a fine line there between energy, being able to control that with the air pressure, with keeping the tension bang on. And I'd go as far as say it doesn't last long before a human's like, this is too complex for me.
Yeah.
You know, this is all too much. I mean, I'm overwhelmed with the control that I need to keep this in place right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So so yeah, that situation and the effect that it has on the chords is a brilliant place to be. Wish I was there more often. But
yeah, exactly.
Instead of having a squeeze.
Yeah, and the more we talk about this, the more it does seem like chord closure needs to be constantly maintained, right? Like you just can't take your eye off it. But that's not true, because you know, with repetition and the training of muscles, that chord closure state can become a default for sure. Absolutely felt that. And again, how the airflow relates to it. Sometimes airflow can get too high or too low in unskilled singers, but once a singer has got used to the vocal mechanism and trained it well, either through exercises or luck, the singer will calibrate the airflow to that instrument, and it will be a wonderfully locked in synergy that may need a bit of help here and there as you feel it slide left or right of the needle. But once you've arrived there and stayed there for a while, the maintenance of it is fairly small. If anything, you're just more care needs to come towards maintaining your health and the health of your vocal folds. But there's a couple of things I'd like to we should talk about as well. Carol, I think we do have your questions, which we will read out. And we'll obviously, you know, we messed up the time, so no doubt we're probably just going to run over a little bit and clear up the rest of the questions and information. But before we get on to Carol's questions, we haven't spoken about squeeze. So the exercises we've spoken about are to increase chord closure if one is breathy or lacking strength in head voice. But we've got to talk about the pressed, the pressed voice. Some pressed voices sound genuinely stuffy, like that. Some actually sound very harmonically rich, like guys. You know, it doesn't sound stuffy, but it sounds overdone. And to close the vocal cords with a little bit of extra gusto could be because often the breathing muscles and the breath in general is actually getting low and low and low. And there's lots of research to suggest that a lower pressure in the lungs over long periods of speaking and singing, obviously the less air you use, the less volume you get. So we looked at other methods to increase volume, and one of those could be to press the vocal cords together to get a bit more harmonic energy. Or as singers, we're just desperate to be loud, desperate to belt and whatever. So we have to find ways to refine chord closure that's in fact too established. And we can look to consonants to do that, and we can look to straws to do that. So and our experience of straws is pretty extensive, right?
Yeah, it's immediate. You know, it's immediate. The sensation you get once you've worked a straw, the straw exercises. That's what I love about it. You just feel it immediately. We said you can't. There's no on-off switch for doing this. And you consciously can't figure it out. So to put something on your mouth and then do some exercises and then feel the extra energy that you get from the 3 minutes of doing that.
Yeah.
I honestly think that one day, like, straws will take over singing coaches.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, yeah.
Well, you know what it's like when you use a straw and it's so effective, and the client is going on the straw, and you just think, I don't even want to get off this. That's the problem with straw phonation. Straw phonation can be so great that anything else you do will be worse. Yeah. Like, nothing is as good as when you've got a straw in your mouth.
But the more it goes on, the more, because that's the first thought when you first get into the straw, like, you think that is the case. But I think, in reality, I think our jobs will move more towards how do we get people from using the straw into real life. And that's where we've actually fit here.
Not just songs, but
just
life.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Just how do we make that transition between the greatness of the straw to song? I think that's actually our job. That should be our title of the vocal coach.
No, true. And for you guys, what we mean by straw phonation is these things. And we can really help chord closure by using a straw, because if for instance we're using too much air to sing, blowing too much air, the straws can block that air on the top side and use it to help our vocal folds manage the airflow from underneath, so we can find a better chord closure and a better setting. But also the pressure that builds up in the mouth spreads the vocal folds apart slightly, like opens the arytenoids a little bit, which can offset squeezing, which can unpress, as they say, the vocal folds. So the straw is an incredible tool to unpress squeezy vocal folds, even to the point where you can glide, or you can do like onset exercises that are very much like giggles. So you can get used to closing and opening the vocal folds, but with something there to help you actually find the right balanced pressure and train the muscles well. But if we looked at consonants that reduce chord closure, what would be your favourites?
Well, so just say on the straw as well. I'd say as a teacher, any teachers listening, I would say when it comes to the application of using a straw, because it is the long game again, using a straw, I find a lot of people don't really engage with it. It's not something they're gonna. I don't know what it is. However much I go crazy about it in a lesson, they won't go away and buy a pack of straws. Like, it's just the thing that we do in a lesson. But over time, I've learned to really bring the energy and to and I think that's all we've got, because there is a small effect we get from the straw, but it is so far away from actually singing, people dismiss it. I think we really need to go in hard on, we've got a set workout every lesson, and this is what you need to do every time you sing. Take these straws, sell them, give them a pack, but really I think our energy is the biggest thing we can bring for the straws, because it's so far away from what singers think is going to help them.
Yeah, and unbelievably that's the case, because the effect of a straw on singers, like, I don't think there's been a vocal exercise ever that has brought as much change positively in a singer than a straw, and over time as well. So if you're not on the straw game, like, honestly, we will make an amazing video about it whenever we stop messing the cameras up. So straw's good, but yeah, talk to us about consonants that reduce chord closure for you. So if someone's trying to get some relief from pressing their voice, what would be your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I just shoot for the W.
Yes,
immediately. You know, just see great results of that. I would obviously be using a vowel that complements that as well, but it's one of my go-tos in the upper register. Whoa, or one or two, my favourites.
Right.
Just repeating up there. And of course, from the SLS manual back in the day, you'll have the Fs and all of the aspirates really. They will help in assisting airflow to leave. So yeah, I would 100% go for W. What's your vibe?
Well, you know what? Like, I think any of the voiced fricatives are good because they're similar to straw. So something like as they again build oral pressure and can unpress the chords. Zzz, zzz, even just puffy cheek. Even so, if someone's going to go for a strong sound and they're kind of advanced, I kind of gravitate towards H sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, hey, just to get a little bit. And you know what? There's often a bit of cry. You can add a bit of like that sort of flip onset, that thing, which is again like trying to balance that chord tension towards the ligament. You know, like come kind of top down on it. Hey, that kind of thing, which again is going to help us to have a slightly more balanced register if that person's flat. Again, assisting in chord closure. So they're my favourites for like, say, the advanced.
So that made me think about when you said advanced, it made me think about the Y as well. Which can often be used. But with all of these, it just depends on like any YouTube video that said this is the way that it's done. Sorry, I'm gonna rant. Pull back, but no, but you know, there's not, and all of these things, it depends on the person, because the way I look at it, like a W, we're morphing through many different vowels on the way of saying a W, right? And it just depends on how that person perceives a W, and when did they actually start phonating during that phase. It's complex, so they just play around.
Yeah, play around.
But yeah, you're likely towards the Y's, the W, the H's, the aspirates if somebody's like overdoing it.
Yeah.
But where are we at?
Well, I'll tell you what we've got. I'd like to mention one more thing before we answer Carol's questions. And you know, the idea of chord closure is controlling muscles initially. And one kind of pseudo chord closure that I just think we should be aware of is that whenever we use high volume and high airflow in singing, that can create like a pseudo chord closure. Like the vocal cords can clap together. They can clap together harder than usual. And because they do, it means that they close at their entire length. So if you're the sort of person who can only be in a chesty sound if volume is present, then chances are volume is the reason why you're able to do it, and the muscles themselves probably aren't doing the job they need to. So by pulling back the airflow and pulling back the volume, do we end up in a breathy sound? In which case our efforts to create great chord closure, very like it's like seamless chord closure from bottom to top without volume dictating it. And that, I think that's really important. But also, you know, some chord closure that's not relative to muscles is how the harmonic energy helps our vocal folds to close as well. That's great because that requires no extra effort at all. It's just how air particles vibrate. So for us to take advantage of good vowel tuning means we're going to achieve a good chord closure through moving air particles above the vocal cords. Which seems pretty wild, but that's how opera singers can create such loud sounds without using loads of muscular effort and excess air. So yeah, I just wanted to throw those couple in. But there's so much about chord closure that can be said. Anyway, shall I read Carol's question to you? Let's go for the first one. I have heard on and off about the false vocal folds. What are they? How do they affect the voice? And can a singer have any control over them as they can have control over the real folds? What do you think?
Well, you've looked at this in distortion, haven't you?
Yes.
What is your thoughts on distortion? How did that affect distortion back in the day? Because that's my only thought with the false folds is the distortion of the sound waves.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And they are another valving mechanism, if you like, that can create one more barrier to our lungs for food and all that stuff, you know. So they are helpful. They're just above the vocal folds. They are asymmetrical, you know. They're just like fleshy,
which is why you get the white noise.
Yeah, which is why the white noise that non-uniform vibrations, and distortion. So I'm not sure exactly about the conscious control of them. I'm pretty sure we don't really consciously control them. I just think they come into play when other muscles that we kind of do consciously control, but actually sometimes unconsciously strain, like the muscles around the neck that can narrow the airway. In which case, if you narrow the airway, the vocal folds can actually come into this chaotic vibration, and they can give us distortion. But I must say, often when you hear that distortion present in unskilled singers, you want to get rid of it, because it's generally pointing towards tightening of the airwaves, which probably lends itself to the fact that the vocal cords underneath are pretty dysfunctional, as in the cord closure is poor or the volume is really high. So unless that person is happy underneath their vocal folds and is aware of how to let some of that muscle fall away and achieve a sound that's much lighter, I'd say the true folds generally add chaos to the system, unless you're skilled and you're working on distortion.
To answer the Carol's question, there's no, as far as we're aware, there's no real use aside from in terms of pitch making or anything like that, which is obviously the primary use of the folds when it comes to singing. So, there's aside from distortion.
And distortion being super advanced, so you could use them for that, but the control over them compared to the real folds is not really a point. It doesn't help us or exist, I don't think. But another vocal coach told her that she never uses aggressively glottal sounds like an edgy staccato because that will damage the vocal folds. She uses sounds with a hard G instead. What is your take on this?
Okay, we've got to be quick, haven't we?
We've got to be quick.
We're on that time. I would say it's all in moderation. We've just, there's a situation where we know if we raise the larynx, widen the mouth, it's going to have an effect on TA activation. So that will, if it's done too much, could cause some abuse, as would any other, like a consonant, which will have the aerodynamic effect as well. Anything that bashes or will encourage the folds to come together, if that's done too much, too long, over time, and there's different ways in which you can do it. There's so many different ways you could do fry.
Like that's pretty squeezed, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. So there are different ways, but it definitely isn't. I mean, I wouldn't discount it. Like, I mean, you've just got to go with your ear and see what the singer's doing and see what position they're in. If they're in a place where they're overdoing it, stop.
Yeah.
And if they're using the tool as it is a tool efficiently, then absolutely let's use it for its benefit.
Yeah, and trust clinically with the experience of it, for someone who absolutely has very little conscious control or activity in the muscles that adduct the vocal folds, good luck with a G. Good luck with the GU, because that does not bring the vocal cords together enough. It is a voiced consonant. It will encourage it, but weak voices, breathy voices, they will just, G builds up air pressure as well, and it all kind of explodes out. It's so easy just to be like that on that. So yes, in extreme cases, staccato is absolutely relevant, but a glottal onset can become default from that. And we have to be aware that other onsets are available, i.e. balanced, where it's not held before you sing, but rather it's it's a balanced onset. It's a simultaneous movement of air and muscle together. But I think some people get such a great result from something staccato. They find a chest voice that they never come away from it. And we know as voice teachers, don't spend too long.
Yeah, definitely on anything.
So there's lots to do, but even so, staccato on a straw helps to balance that a little bit. You can really get some placeholder benefit from the straw. But I'm glad you enjoyed that answer, Carol. We have to end it here. Again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for coming.
Where can they find us online?
There's no point. thenakedvocalist.com.
Who does W?
Yeah.
Double W.
And Facebook as well. That's where we hang out most. The website is rubbish.
It's going to get redone at some point.
Yeah.
Right?
So go to Facebook, because that's where it's all new.
Yeah, and get yourself along to iSingmag.com for our next article. Obviously we're on issue, is it 12 now? So there's so much to read up on there. If you haven't joined it already, you can get a few free copies as part of the sign up as well. But if not, keep in touch with us. And if you have any more questions about this subject, then please do get in touch. Thanks to those of you who joined us today. I'm Chris.
I'm Steve.
And you can catch us probably next month on the other webinar. See you again soon.